Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I think it's a great pleasure and honor for me today to be with well-known figures in Islamic financial industry, not Islamic banking only, banking and also some other sectors. So today I have on my left side Dr. Adnan Shilwan, and I think they don't need introduction. Their name only is enough to know who are they, and I think their track records in the past 3 or 4 decades, I think it's the best introduction. But briefly, Dr. Adnan is the CEO of the Dubai Islamic Banks. He was awarded number of international well-known awards. Part of that is one of the award he granted is one of the top 100 CEOs in the Middle East. Also, I'm honored to have Mr. Muhammad Abdel Bari, Abu Amina, Hayakallah Abu Amina. So, and also Mr. Muhammad, he has a track record of around 3 decades of experience in the financial and banking services. He is now the CEO of the Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, the Chief Executive Officer for the group. So, welcome to the panel. As you have heard, the panel today is speaking about the role of the Islamic banking groups, such as the groups that both of you are leading. After the 50 years of the experience of Islamic banking, and by the way, before I start the discussion, I would like to congratulate البركة for this very great, work they issued about the Islamic banking groups, and I think this. One of the things that we are expecting from such not-for-profit organization, which is great, prepared, and with all the figures relating to these groups. And let me start with some of the figures that they have mentioned there. We are having in our international financial industry, we have around 9 groups. Your groups is really important part of this number of institutions. So Dubai Islamic Banks is the first Islamic banking globally in 1975, and you are operating now in 6 jurisdictions. And as per the report that you have as assets by end of 2023 as around 93.8 or almost 94 billion US dollar. At the same time, Abu Dhabi Islamic Banking, you are operating now in 4 jurisdictions, and also your assets around 61 billion. So before I go for the challenges, because it's really important in this context, I would like to be positive. I would like to start with the competitive advantage that these kind of groups, when I say groups, the Islamic banking, the full-fledged Islamic banking, they are operating cross borders in different countries. As I mentioned, both of you are working in different jurisdictions. First of all, I would like to ask both of you about the competitive advantages that you have, and I would like to shed light from different angles. The first angle I would like to ask, let me start from my left hand, Dr. Adnan, about the competitive advantage that you have over the national non-group Islamic banks. So you are, as a group, you are working globally in different jurisdictions. So sometimes you can, I don't want to start to give some advantages. For example, you can, if you are working in different jurisdictions, that you can manage some of the risks by having different, you can say, banks globally. So can you shed light about some of the competitive advantages of such groups comparing to the national or non-group Islamic banks?
Thank you, Dr. Hamid. First of all, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I can start by saying congratulations to the Baraka Symposium first, because I think symposiums like these allow us and industry practitioners and scholars to get together under one roof, and the objective of everybody in this audience, whether they are only here to listen or they are here to further the cause of Islamic finance, is that we want to take Islamic finance to newer geographies. We want to take Islamic finance to penetrate into markets that we have not been operating in before. And I think it gives Dubai Islamic Bank, or anybody for that matter, when they participate in symposiums like these, to only further the cause of that objective. And our objective started 50 years ago, in 1975, when Dubai Islamic Bank was formed. And alhamdulillah, today, in 2025, we've completed 50 years. So together within this audience, I think it's important to acknowledge that Islamic finance has just completed its 50th anniversary. When you talk about distinct competitive advantages, that a group like Dubai Islamic Bank has, a full-fledged Islamic banking group, over, you said, national Islamic banks. I feel rather than talking about the advantages that we have over national Islamic banks, we have an advantage over almost any financial institution in the world. And that advantage is that our audience is much bigger. Our target market is much bigger than, let's say, a conventional bank. I think I want to start positively by saying that any Islamic bank has a distinct advantage in attracting a larger population, and it need not only be people that have belief in the Islamic banking system, but in fact the way we should be trying to target global markets is that we want to look at anybody and everybody and show them the importance of Islamic finance and bring them on. Why is that important? It's important because you need to position Islamic banks as a bank for all. When you look at conventional banking, conventional banks only try to attract a certain segment based on their values and principles. An Islamic bank or an Islamic financial institution which was started in 1975 all the way back with the advent of Dubai Islamic Bank brought about a new discipline, a new, let's say for the choice of better word, alternative to conventional form. I use this word alternative because obviously the banking system used to operate prior to Islamic banking used to be in existence for 400 years. And then came Islamic banking with our great scholars. And we said that, you know what, we have to give people an alternative to what was happening in the conventional form. Since then, we have evolved. We've become very large. As an industry, we are now hitting $4 trillion. I feel that we have a lot of distinct advantage, and I'm sure when you ask us questions about challenges, everybody in the audience will talk about challenges. But we need to acknowledge that we are in a very good space right now where we are not only attracting people of belief, but we are also attracting everyone. And why are we doing that? It's because our banking has evolved so much based on innovation, based on transformation, and based on technology, that we are now telling everyone that, you know, Islamic banking is not only for people of a certain faith, it's for everyone. And that will only help us taking Islamic finance forward and making it not an alternative, but making it the norm of banking. It hurts me when people say that this is an alternative form. Why? Why is conventional banking the benchmark? Today, we are a benchmark. Of course, we are only 50 years old, yes, right? But the next 50 years are going to be the meteoric rise that we've seen in the last couple of decades is only going to make Islamic finance accepted by all, Islamic finance going to new geographies, and Islamic finance penetrating in new geographies.
If you allow me some follow-up questions, yeah, that you mentioned, I feel some of these points, very valid points, very important point that you mentioned, is more a responsibility, not an advantage. Do you agree?
Well, I think an advantage, if you can only benefit from advantages or enjoy advantages if you're responsible, right? I think in any business, if you're not responsible, you cannot, take the distinct advantages or benefit from those advantages. Of course, it's a responsibility. Of course, it's a responsibility because there are people that are expecting. Responsibility is lies hand in hand with a lot of expectations. There is an expectation that we are an alternative form and we should penetrate. There's that expectation that will always be there, but we don't shy away from those responsibilities.
Also, you mentioned the word that we are now the benchmark. How can you prove this? How can you to show the audience now we are the benchmark?
Well, Islamic banking has become a benchmark in the last couple of decades, and clearly because when the global financial crisis emerged way back in 2008, there were a lot of financial institutions that that collapsed. Islamic finance industry as an industry showed everyone that we are resilient. It's because when we went back to our basics, everybody realized that it is the real form of banking, and asset-based banking and asset-backed banking is something that would allow us to weather the storm that we saw in the global financial crisis. And hence, I think today we have definitely become a benchmark, and numbers speak for themselves.
See, and again, this is the word, I like that you ended your answer with this, with this word, that I would like to finalize the last follow-up question about, you mentioned about some aspiration. How successful in achieving this aspiration? For example, you mentioned all, and you mentioned by all different religions, not only Islamic, not only for Muslims. So, do you think that you are successful enough in the past 50 years in achieving this aspiration?
Of course.
With some figures, if you could.
Of course we are successful enough, because when this journey started 50 years ago, right, it was an alternative form. Today, if you look at the structures and the products and the acceptance of Islamic finance, we are operating, and I just don't talk about Dubai Islamic Bank as such, right, but we are a case study today. A decade and a half ago, 12 years to be precise, we used to have a balance sheet of about $20 billion. Today, you mentioned, I didn't have to market myself, that you mentioned that we are at $95 billion. How does that become? How do you become so successful? It's because you have penetrated into markets that you were never operating in before. We used to operate in one market. Today, we operate in 7 geographies. We are going into markets where the banking penetration is as nascent as 2%, 3%. So these numbers only validate the fact that we've become successful.
Why does non-Muslim buy your products?
We have another panelist also, but I'll definitely, sorry Muhammad, I'm not taking the thunder away. Why do anybody buy our products? Let's just differentiate even why would a person who believes in Islamic banking come to Islamic banking, right? It's all about the way we positioned ourselves, okay? We are very true to the discipline that we set up for ourselves 50 years ago. And I'm talking about the industry at large. I'm just not talking about Dubai Islamic Bank. 50 years ago, when Islamic banking started, we had certain values and we had certain principles. Those values and principles till today exist. We've not compromised those. But what we have done is we have positioned ourselves as a bank for all. Let me give you a simple example, and I think that will also engage the audience a bit. I came last night from Dubai, right? And it's always great to be in Medina. So when we went, let's say if my office is booking a travel plan for me, and they go to a travel agent, what are they going to ask the travel agent, for example? Are they going to ask the travel agent that, okay, Dr. Adnan wants to go from Dubai to Medina, can you tell me the airline that is the most safest? Because we want him to reach from Dubai to Medina. They're not going to ask them that, right? Why? It's because when I start my journey from Dubai, I'm expected to come to Medina. That's just understanding that I would, inshallah, bi-idhnillah, I would go from Dubai to Medina and I'll reach safely. So nobody calls the travel agent and says that, can you tell me the best airline which will take him safely from Dubai to Medina? They'll not ask them that. They'll say, give me an airline which is convenient, which has probably excess baggage allowances, good food, it connects to anywhere in the world. Why? Is because safety is inherent within the travel industry. So nobody is going to talk about safety. What would they talk about? They'll talk about economics, they'll talk about the cost of the ticket, they'll talk about the logistics, they'll talk about entertainment, they'll talk about travel time, all of that. So Islamic banks need to position themselves as a good value proposition that is going to attract the end user, and they don't need to tell anyone or keep repeating that they are an Islamic bank, because they are an Islamic bank. Nobody is going to doubt that their principles are compromised or their ethics are compromised. So I think how we have grown in the last 50 years as an industry is because we've come up with innovation. we've come up with technological advancements, we've come up with value propositions that meet the requirements of the end user. And of course, how do we do it? We do it ethically, we do it Islamically. So Islamic banks and Islamic financial institutions need to position themselves as a need-based banking so that they are satisfying the needs of the end user. And if they do that, we'll become bigger and bigger and bigger and penetrate into more geographies.
So you mentioned a very good number of things that I will come back to it, but after I go to Mr. Mohammed, thank you, Dr. Adnan. Mr. Mohammed, I would like now to go back to these full-fledged Islamic banking groups. If I would like to go back to the competitive advantages that you have. Over now, let us speak about conventional banking, even conventional banking that national or these giant cross-border, conventional banking. How do you see the competitive advantages?
Thank you, Dr. Hamid, and السلام عليكم. سعيد جدا بوجودي معاكم النهارده. I think we've covered a lot of points, and I think the most important part of our discussion is that it is ours to claim, I would say. Right? So it's not something you have to almost fight for to get, but if you go back and look at how Islamic banks are positioned or structured, right? We are solving what I always call for a very few very important KPIs. And the KPIs which set us apart from other financial institutions is that we solve clearly for a financial outcome, we solve for product innovation, we solve for community, we solve for our people, but also we solve for a better future. And if you put them all together and in terms of weights, all the weights are equally important. And the overarching part is our Sharia principles. Right? All these 5 elements, none of them is more important than the other. Now, for you to compete in a world which has been changing very fast, so if you go back in time, what used to change in 5 to 10 years is now changing in 5 years, and I think if you fast forward, it will change every year. I'll give you a simple example, the digitization of banking. It used to be a big word, right? Everyone talks about digital. If you go into any convention and don't use the word digital, you almost miss something. But this digital transformation has now becoming something of the past. Now we start talking about Gen AI, machine learning. How are you taking it to the next level? Now, touching on your point of how you become more competitive advantage when you operate in different jurisdictions, is that when, as part of any business model, if you're too concentrated in one country with very specific dynamics, you don't create the needed diversity to create what we call air cover at times where things don't go your way. So when you start operating in a country and then other jurisdictions, it gives you almost that balancing edge to ensure that you continuously are able to compete in a very challenging market.
Boamina, if you allow me, we agreed together before the session to be very frank. Yes. Today will be very open and frank. If we would like to compare these aspirations when the pioneers started 50 years ago or more to build the Islamic banking, do you think these values, these aspirations, in ground, is it there? Do you see it in practice now, after 30 years, almost now 28 years of experience of Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, Adib?
Yeah.
How do you see the comparison between these values on the ground?
I think the values have not changed. The values are the values, right? You cannot change values, but the way you achieve your financial aspirations and delivering these values, this might change. As long as certain, what we call standards, are fixed. They worked in the past, they're working today, and they will work in the future. But we as Islamic banks, we have to adapt, right? We are operating in a world which is changing, competition is fierce, and you have to be agile enough to ensure that you deliver the outcome for your clients and for your community by also being agile enough to protect your values and Sharia standards, but also shouldn't be an obstacle. It should be an advantage. And I think this is a very fine line which we feel every day. How do you balance between agility and moving fast but still protect Sharia standards?
Mr. Mohammed, I would like to ask you from another angle. Is the risk in your products compared to the conventional product, is the same or different?
I wouldn't call it risk, it's a structure. Islamic banking has proven time and time again that at times of crisis, or meltdown, it has been more resilient. So the answer is that the structure is almost time-proof. It works in good times and in bad times. It's all about the client experience, because we are operating in a financial service industry. You do what the client eventually needs, not what the client or what the bank wants to sell. So if you're able to provide that service in a structured way, in a seamless way, in a very, I would say, high-quality customer experience level, that's when you achieve your goals.
But assume that we have the same needs for the same client. For example, if we would like to issue like bond or sukuk, as example,
yes,
or financing, bridge financing, whatever. Assume that you have the same client, same need, and you have conventional product for your competitors, and you have in your Islamic banks a same product, like a sukuk and bonds. From your point of view, is the risk different or same?
So I will sound biased, of course, but I would say that in Islamic terms, it's more risk mitigated because of the underlying structure. Right? So that is what...
But sorry, if I can have it in one word, is it the same or different?
Risk is different.
Different.
Yes.
So is that a challenge for you? Because I understand that usually the pricing of any product, it depends on the risk. Correct. So if and I assume that your risk always is more than the risk that the conventional banking or finance is there. Is this, for example, this one of the examples I would like to illustrate that about what you are facing comparing to your competitors, conventional banking, that if you would like, sometimes I don't want to take any position. By the way, I don't have any position today. What I'm saying is not my beliefs.
Yeah.
Regardless of my beliefs, I would like to just to communicate some of the ideas. Yes. So if the risk is different, so I think this is the risk. How can you compete with the same product and the clients if you say, the logic says that if the same product with different risk, that you have to charge more, because it's not fair to have the same product with different risk and you charge same. So how you deal with such kind of challenges with your competitors? And I think there is a trade-off. Just to give a priority to the beliefs and to Sharia, standards and to comply with Sharia, and you will end up with different risk. That means supposed to be more expensive, and to lose the competition, or to prioritize the competition, and by the end of the day, I think next week you have very, very, very difficult week, that the announcement of the financial result for all the financial institutions in Emirates. So next week, you are waiting for next week, you are working for the next week. So when you are preparing for the next week, how you make your decisions as a CEO, you have this trade-off, which one you will prioritize and how to deal with it?
So first of all, I think you're raising a very, very good point, and something which we live in every day. Right? Because it's not, in my view, we're not playing on equal fields, particularly when it comes to, you mentioned sukuk or bond transactions, and at a time where you have a client who is slightly indifferent from an Islamic versus conventional angle, you are slightly at a disadvantage, because the structure which you are implementing as per your Sharia standards, which we fully support and believe in, can put a lot of obstacles in terms of the decision-making process, turnaround time, and also pricing when it comes to the client eventually making a decision. And that is why I think the latest statistics I've seen, only 22% of new issuances are in the Islamic domain, and the rest, almost 80%.
Which market you are talking about?
GCC, in the GCC. Right?
Sovereign and corporate, or both? Or
both. I'm taking all together. Right? So that is a very small percentage, and it is explained exactly what you mentioned, because in some instance, a corporate client who is indifferent between an Islamic structure or conventional structure would look at turnaround time, simplicity, documentation, and maybe even cheaper, and move forward.
So before I go to the solution, this is a really important question. I will come back. I would like to ask the same question to you, Dr. Adnan. Again, you have this very big challenge. You have the trade-off between complying 100% with Sharia, with Islamic principles, and to compete with the conventional competitors. How to do in such situations?
So thank you, Dr. Hamid. And if I can just, the question that you had for Brother Muhammad, and he said that the risks are, in his opinion, different between a conventional bank and an Islamic bank. And if you allow me, my take on this is a bit different, right? I feel we are operating in an environment where the risks are the same. Okay? So a risk that an Islamic bank would take on a customer is exactly the same that a conventional bank would take on a customer. This is my take, and I can explain it to you. When an individual comes to a bank for a credit facility, whether it's an individual, whether it's a corporate, whether it's a government, the underlying risks and the evaluation of those risks in a conventional bank and an Islamic bank are the same. Your mitigants, if any, are different in an Islamic bank and in a conventional bank. Allow me to make the point first. If you are going to a conventional bank as a customer, and let's say you want a personal finance, they are going to evaluate your eligibility based on your income, based on your profile, based on where you work. If you go to an Islamic bank and you ask for a personal finance, they are going to evaluate your eligibility based on your income, based on your profile, and based on where you work. The underlying risk is the same. You going to a conventional bank or you going to an Islamic bank does not change you or your needs or your risk. It's exactly the same. What changes between a conventional bank and an Islamic bank are the structures that they are going to put in front of you to satisfy your need. The structures are what would mitigate a risk for an Islamic bank versus mitigate a risk for a conventional bank. The underlying concept of Islamic finance does not mean it is different in evaluation of risk, and that is why it should price high or price low. The underlying principles of Islamic finance are core values, the way we do our business, our structures, our compliance to Islamic jurisprudence, but does not mean that we have to evaluate risk differently or try to take on a customer that is more risky or less risky. That is when, if it was that case, your pricing would be different. Every financial institution prices risk. How you do your risk mitigation is what brings your prices down or up. So, and that's where I just differ with what Muhammad says. I don't think so we are dealing with different risks. The risk is the same. How an Islamic bank meets that risk requirement and how a conventional bank does it is completely different. And that's the reason why in 2008, Islamic banks did not collapse. It's because our underlying risk mitigants were based on real assets. Our structures were intact. Our structures were real as opposed to conventional banks where it was not real.
I will come back to 2008. I have to argue, Dr. Adnan, and
Sure.
please allow me. Again,
Sure.
it doesn't mean what I believe. I will go back. Let me go back to Sukuk and bond. I'm not talking, you have the client X and X credit, the credit can say rating of the same, is the same. For your client, it's the same.
Risk rating. Yeah.
Risk rating. So I'm not talking about the risk of the client. I'm talking about if you have a bond, simply you have the credit risk only. And then you don't have to go about the underlying asset. There is no underlying asset. You have only the credit risk. It's a loan. But if you have to go to the sukuk, you cannot have that as simple as that. And even your word, mitigate, that means there is a different risk and you are mitigating.
No.
If there is a different risk, you don't need to mitigate. By
No.
the end of the day, you have different type of risk.
No.
So let us go to bond and sukuk. So is it same?
From which? From
risk point of view, by the end of the day, you have assets.
No, you see, I think...
Or some kind of relationships with us, or assumption,
Yeah.
or assumed to be relating to assets. Asset base or asset back, we'll come to that later. I don't want to go to sukuk now.
Yeah. So where do you want to go now?
I want to say, again, your word, mitigate, that means it's not same.
No. I think you have to understand that a conventional bank also mitigates their risk. An Islamic bank also mitigates their risk. We are in the business of risk mitigation. No bank would be doing business if they are not unable to mitigate the risk. So let's just try and understand what we are talking about. You used a statement that bond and sukuks are the same.
No, it's supposed
Are you
to be not the same.
Are you asking me if they are the same?
It's supposed to be not the same. The target, the goals, the needs, same, no doubt.
Okay.
Even in Quran, they said the bay' is like riba. So, but by the end of the day, you are talking about two products trying to make the same goal, but supposed to be with different types of risks?
No, it is supposed to be with different type of structures.
No doubt.
It is supposed to be with, so let's understand the need of the corporate client or the government or the sovereign or the individual is the same, correct? We agree.
Yes.
The need is the same. So for example, if you want to buy a car, you want to buy a car. You can go to a conventional bank or you can go to an Islamic bank. Your need is the same.
So?
The structure and the underlying principles and the underlying documentation that this bank would meet that requirement and this bank would meet the requirement is where Islamic banking is, right? So because we have these underlying principles that are meeting our requirement of this need of the customer, we are in a position to say what are the risk mitigants that we want to put in place over and above simple credit. So when you talk about sukuks, right? When you talk about sukuks versus a conventional bond, what is different? The structure that we are making that finance available to the end user is different. And with those structures, you have your risk mitigants in place. A conventional bank, for example, if they are going to give let's say a corporate loan to a customer, they would have a different risk mitigation in place. They would probably hedge the position. They would probably do a derivative on that position, right? An Islamic bank has an alternative also. So I think let's try and separate this myth from everyone. We are operating in an environment where customers' wants and needs are evolving, like Muhammad says, every day. If you want to compete in this space, you've got to come up with alternatives and solutions that do not compromise your principles, do not compromise your core values as Islamic finance, but you can always have alternatives that allows you to satisfy the need.
Thank you, Dr. Adnan. I think my job is today not to be convinced, and again, I don't have any position. My job is today is to try my ultimate best to show the different opinions. Let me go back with the same, Abu Amina, Mr. Muhammad. Some people, they say that if this is the situation, that means that Islamic banking using Islam or Sharia as a tool of marketing. If the risk same and you are charging the same or more, and so that means you are using Islam, not serving Islam, or using Sharia, not serving Sharia. You are using the emotions of the targeted audience of the people, and you are not serving them. So how do you see that based on this discussion? Again, I don't have position.
No, I think it's good. We have three different positions here, right? So
and again, after 50 years, we are speaking about the impact of Islamic banking after 50 years.
And living in, having lived and worked in many countries, and now lately in the UAE, where there's a huge expat population, you hear it a lot, right? It's the same product. You're calling it Islamic conventional, but it's only kind of a word. But I disagree with that. Right? So I fundamentally disagree with that concept because, and I think Dr. Adnan said it quite nicely, is that you are not buying a mortgage. You're buying a house. You're not buying auto finance. You're buying the car itself. Right? You're getting a personal finance for a use. So the outcome is the product itself. Now, how you deliver that product to the client differs between Islamic and conventional.
Absolutely.
We have a structure. We abide by Sharia principle to satisfy a client need. Now, the client wants a car. He wants a house. Let us work it out how to do it. So I fundamentally disagree that it's only emotional playing on Islamic versus conventional. Having worked on both sides of the institution, so I've done conventional, I've done Islamic bank, I can tell you they're fundamentally different structures meeting still a client need.
100%. And sorry to interject, but Dr. Hamid, I think you said that there are a lot of people who feel that it is the same. You know, we want people like those to be in audiences like these, right? Because it allows us to change the myth that there is, that we are banking on beliefs. The core fundamental principles, like Muhammad says, we will never compromise the core fundamental principles of Islamic banking. 50 years ago, when the industry started, till today it is the same principles. But just because we've got more innovation in it doesn't mean that we are doing the same thing, right? So I think it's extremely important that everybody understands. You asked me a question, a leading follow-up question to something that I mentioned. You said that, can you prove to us that Islamic finance or Islamic banking has met those aspirations? Of course. 50 years ago when Dubai Islamic Bank started, it was an alternative form of banking for the Muslim customers. Only. Why? Is because when we started Islamic banking way back in 1975, it was, give us an option for our Muslim brothers and sisters. Today, if you look at the penetration of Islamic finance, it's not only the Muslim brothers and sisters, it is anybody and everybody that is coming in. Right? We are convincing a lot of sovereigns around the world to tap the Islamic capital markets. Right? They are indifferent, they were indifferent, but today they've realized that yes, there is a lot of opportunity for them. How are we doing that? We are doing that because we have not compromised our core principles. They are still the same, but we brought innovation, and we've brought technology, and we brought advancement, we brought structures that meets the needs of all those people, and that is the only way this Islamic finance is going to become a norm. Otherwise, 50 years from today, we will be sitting in a room like this, and we will be still saying it's an alternative form. It's not an alternative form.
So, thank you very much. It's really valid points. I would like, maybe by end of this session, I would like to ask about the impact. I believe that Islamic banking is part of Islamic economy, and I think it's not fair. You are not a charity. It's not a charity. What you are leading is not a charity, and supposed to be not a charity. And we have the Islamic economy is a complete system. We have for-profit, and you are part of that for-profit. Even you are not the whole for-profit, and we have not for-profit. We have zakah, we have a waqf, we have endowment. All of these things. We have two wings, and we cannot fly without two wings. And it's not fair to ask the Islamic banking to do the overall Islamic economy theory. Sure. Again, I believe in that, but at the same time, you have to have an impact. If someone is comparing conventional banking, such as these giants that you are leading, and comparing another conventional banking, is the impact on society, is the impact on sustainability, is the impact on the economy, is the impact on the GDP. Again, I'm not asking you to play the overall economy. I know you are very just a part of this. Do you think that there is a difference between your impact in the past 50 years comparing to your competitors? In brief, please.
Yeah, very in brief. I think the short answer is yes, because Islamic banks, as I mentioned, are solving for many KPIs. We are definitely a for-profit organization, but we also solve for many other KPIs. You mentioned community. We have a responsibility for product innovation. We lead the market in terms of ensuring that the client needs are met. Now, very briefly, I think where we have done very well and we need to do more is that we have to continuously provide solutions to the client, even the client doesn't know about. Because if you only tell the client what he knows, you haven't done much. But you almost continuously have to provide these solutions. Hence, I think it's very important that Islamic banks, like every other institution, has to embrace the changes which are happening in the world. Gen AI is important, and continuously looking at this.
You give me an example. If I would like to ask the same question in a different words. Dr. Adnan, if you are operating in a non-Muslim country, and the vast majority of the population is non-Muslims, and because you said by the end of the day you are providing product with values, with aspirations, all of that stuff, do you think you will be able to compete and to attract market share in non-Muslim community when you are selling your product with the value behind these products?
Absolutely yes. That is why we are in existence today. UAE is a classic example. UAE is a classic example. Of course, it's a country, it's a Muslim country, but look at the population within the country, right? If you look at, there's a lot of expat population, and not all of them are Muslims. We have, as an Islamic banking industry, grown within the UAE today, right? And we've got a few names that have added to that. Is we are close to about 30% of the banking industry. Another example is East Africa. We are operating in Kenya today. It's not a Muslim country. Why did we go there? We went there because we want Islamic banking to penetrate. Please understand what I'm trying to say. We are trying to get Islamic banking or Islamic finance to new geographies. Doesn't mean we want Islamic banking to penetrate only in Muslim countries. If we focus like that, we will only be the tip of the iceberg always. 50 years, today Islamic banking is known globally. Why? Why is it known globally? Because we have done very well in Islamic countries? No. It's known globally because we have gone to countries that did not understand Islamic banking, and we penetrated there. We are operating in Bosnia, both of us. We are operating in Bosnia. It's not a Muslim country, but the take-up is there. I feel that as practitioners, of course, we should go to countries that are fundamentally Islamic in nature, very good. But when we go to countries that are fundamentally in Islamic nature, Dr. Hamid, do you think our job is easy? No. Because if that was the case, then Islamic banking in Indonesia should be 90% penetration. But Islamic banking in Indonesia is only 3% penetrated.
Why?
Because people do not understand. People over there do not have Islamic banking.
Is the issue of the population or the banks?
Of course, it's the issue of the population. When you don't have, the population does not have a bank. When the population, listen, we can be very cynical in this room and we can say that is Islamic banking only for Muslims alone? We should only go to those countries. Today, Islamic banking is operating. Today, Islamic banking is operating in markets where we have penetrated and we've made it a more global phenomenon.
Thank you, Doctor. I know the time is very sensitive now. I would like to go to two very important questions. Number one, I don't know. I don't want to give statements. I would like to make a question. Do you think it's a fair playing field between you and your competitors? I mean the conventional banking. For example, about laws and regulations, the central banks. So is it fair that you are operating under the same, almost same supervisory framework, region or nationally and internationally? Is that a fair playing field? What do you think?
I think the short answer is no, it's not fair playing field. I think Islamic banks have to work much harder to claim their share of the market, and hence we have an additional responsibility to almost try to internally not be almost the victim of ourselves. We have to find solutions to be at par and even be more agile and faster than our competition. Today, that's not the case. Let's be very honest. We work much harder to claim our share of the market.
Dr. Adnan, if I would like to ask you the same question. First of all, yes or no? Is it a fair playing field?
I don't want to say fair or unfair. I think it's a level playing field that, whether we like it or not, we have to operate in that field. And the simple answer to that, and I'm not trying to be politically correct here, the simple answer to that is because Islamic finance is only 50 years old. Conventional banking has been there in existence. So the rules and regulations that regulators have around the world are there since existence of Islamic finance. Now, if we have to make our space within that already existing room, we've got to maneuver ourselves. So I agree with Muhammad that we have to work harder because it's not a level playing field. But I don't want to say fair and unfair. The field is not level playing.
Political. So again,
I think the moderator has the easiest job in the audience, right? Which is to ask questions, isn't it?
So if I would like to go back again, as a CEO, I would like to go to some specific question for you as groups. Maybe the majority of these questions apply for the national Islamic bank and the groups, the cross-border, groups. So you mentioned a very important point, Mr. Muhammad, about the expectation and your job as Islamic banks, generally speaking, national or cross-border, is more than the homework needed or the things that needed from the conventional banking, because you will find difficulties because you are working under the same supervisions, the same laws and regulations. So sometimes you feel some of these laws, regulations is not cater for your needs. So you have to convince the regulator to adjust and to prove this will not harm the overall, you can say, banking system nationally and internationally. So can you give some examples about how to deal with this? Because you have to deal short term and mid to long term. Short term, your Sharia board says this is haram. This is not Sharia compliant. You cannot buy it, you cannot deal with it, or if you deal with it, you have to purify it, tathir, you take out the profit out of the deals. So that will impact you with your competitors. At the same time, you will start with the central bank or the regulator, generally speaking, or the regulators, just to convince them to do some kind of adjustment. So first of all, just very briefly, if both of you, gents, you can just help the audience I would like them to see some of your challenges that you are dealing with on daily basis. So first of all, very briefly, first of all, on the short term, is Sharia board that said this is haram? No way, not Sharia compliant. Don't do it, or you are going to do it, you have to purify the ribh out of it or the profit out of it. And then, do you have examples and to deal with it in short to long term, and then you were successful in changing some of these frameworks? Briefly, if you
Sure, very briefly. I think the challenge is that at the end of the day, as I mentioned, it's the client needs. We are doing what we think is good for the client and eventually good for the banking institution. In many cases where we are hindered by regulations and it is not allowed under Sharia principles, we have created an operating rhythm of always saying we cannot do that, and then we have to follow up with what can we do. Right? It's easy to stop at we cannot do. And we are teaching ourselves, enforcing ourselves with our Sharia board to always give alternative solutions. I'll give you an example, is that recently we issued what we call fractional sukuks. And this is what is fractional sukuks is tokenizing the sukuk issuance for our clients using digital assets. Now, digital assets is a new concept in Islamic finance. I know that it's still, the verdict's still out there, what is allowed and not allowed, but we were able to work with our Sharia authorities and well, central bank to tokenize some of these sukuks, offering to the wider markets and accordingly being able also to compete with the other conventional banks.
Thank you, Mohammed. Doctor, the same question, but also if you could add to it, again, one of the specialties that you have as a cross-border groups, that you are dealing even the more complication. You are dealing with different regulators, different central banks.
Yeah.
So for sure, the regulation in some of the countries is different than others. How you deal with such challenge and how that will impact your final results as a group? How do you deal with it?
I think it is true. That's challenging, right? Because so very quickly, I think there is a challenge. There is a challenge in dealing with different regulators around the world, right? Because there are different rules and different regulations. But you have to make sure that you abide by those domestically. It's clearly something that affects overall commercial economics, but that's just the name of the game, Dr. Hamid.
Thank you. للمنظمين إذا كان فقط يوزعوا الميكروفونات حتى نكسب الوقت. الله يعطيكم العافية وأنا أشكر التزام الجميع والتزامهم بالوقت وعدم مقاطعة الجلسة. If you allow me the final question, are you frenemies? Are you familiar with frenemies? Frenemies, enemies or friends? Is cooperation and competition like water and fire doesn't coexist? So I would like to ask you, generally speaking, between Islamic banks in the national level, international level, are you frenemies, enemies, friends? How do you feel yourselves?
So, should I start first? So I would like to believe we are friends to start with. Let's park this on the side.
Be very frank.
No, I'm very frank. So and we operate in the same industry, and not only between me and Dr. Adnan, but all the CEOs of the banks. We are working together. We have to be friends. Does it mean we're not competing? Of course, we're competing, 100%. Right. So we are in a market which is very competitive, and competition is good competition because it keeps us on our toes, all of us, right? And we learn from each other, right? So it's almost like to become a better institution, competition is important. So, but I want to re-emphasize, I think, Dr. Adnan, we are friends, unless you have a different view.
Dr. Adnan, I would like to...
Just thinking about it.
For sure, friends. But are you satisfied and happy with the level of cooperation between the Islamic banks globally, nationally and globally?
No, absolutely. I think we would not have reached here if we did not cooperate among ourselves, right? And I think the cooperation does not only start or end at, banking financial practitioners, but also the Sharia scholars. They are a very important ingredient within this ecosystem. I feel that, we are blessed to have the Sharia scholars that we have, in the last 30, 40 years, is because the fact that they have a vantage point that allows them to look at things a little differently. When you have a vantage point where you can look at not just one institution, but everything that is happening in other institutions, it allows you to create friends.
Let us hear what is the judgment of the audience. And الأخوة والأخوات الآن ننتقل إلى اسمحوا لي سأكون صارما جدا لن أسمح بأكثر من 60 ثانية دقيقة حد أقصى. المجال ليس للمداخلات وإنما للأسئلة. إن كان هناك مجال في نهاية الوقت للمداخلات سنفتحه. فنود أن نسمع من الجمهور. فين الميكروفونات؟ الميكروفونات وين؟ الله يحفظكم. سريعا الله يحفظكم حتى بس نكسب الوقت. سنأخذ سريعا كحد أقصى دقيقة من كل مداخلة أو سؤال في حد أقصى دقيقة واحدة. تفضل شيخ.
شكرا للجميع. أحب أن أقرأ جرس تنبيه أننا خلال 50 سنة حبسنا أنفسنا في المصرفية الإسلامية. الرواد الأوائل كانوا يريدون أن نصل إلى أكثر من المصرفية، وهي أن نصل إلى مرحلة الاقتصاد الإسلامي. للأسف الشديد خلال 50 سنة لا نجد تعاون بين المؤسسات البنكية الموجودة في عالمنا العربي والعالمي. كل جماعة تعمل لنفسها حتى في البلد الواحد. نحن بحاجة إلى تنمية المجتمعات التي نعيش فيها، وتشترك كل البنوك في أي دولة لإقامة مشروعات تنموية الربح فيها أكثر والعطاء فيها أكثر وتنمية الدولة أكثر. هذا الذي ينقصنا خلال هذه المرحلة. أعتقد 50 السنة القادمة نحتاج إلى فكر استراتيجي غير أن نحبس أنفسنا في المصرفية. شكرا.
شكرا.
معلش.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وصلى الله على رسول الله. أنا مسرور جدا من هذا اللقاء المتبادل، والواقع أنه في الواقع يعني أوجد لنا ما يعتبر مع الأسف الشديد ما يعتبر عداء بين المصرفية الإسلامية وبين المصرفية التقليدية. والواقع أن الهدف للمصرفيتين هو الوصول إلى ما تتحقق به المصلحة العامة والفوائد المبعدة كل الأخطار فيما يتعلق بالمصلحة. وهذا يعني أنه يجب أن يكون بين المصرفتين تفاهم وبعد عن مفهوم أن يكون هناك يعني تنافس عدائي بين المصرفيتين. فينبغي في الواقع أن يوجد عندنا روح تعاون وروح تفاهم ونقاش فيما نتفق عليه وفيما نختلف عليه. ما نختلف عليه هو في الواقع محل النقاش، ولكن نقاش هادئ مبني على الحصول على حل الإشكال الذي يطرأ أو يدعى به على تدعي به كل جهة على الجهة الأخرى من حيث ما يتعلق بالمشاكل. فهذا في الواقع على كل حال يعتبر من أهم المواضيع ومن أهم في الواقع المناهج الذي ينبغي نقاشها فيما يتعلق بالمؤتمرات وفي الندوات. حفظكم الله.
شكر الله لكم شيخنا، الله يرفع قدرك يحفظك. شيخنا الشيخ عبد الرحمن، بس اسمحوا لي كم الأيادي التي تريد أن تشارك بس حتى يعرفوا دير الوقت. الله يحفظكم. 1 2 تدخل في كم يد في المنطقة الوسطى؟ في أحد هنا بده يشارك بس حتى نكسب الوقت؟ أنا لا أرى في أحد في المنطقة اليسار. طيب. I will gather it all and then I will. تفضل شيخ.
السلام عليكم. أنا مشاركتي في نقطة وردت في الحديث كثيرا، وهي هل المنتجات المصرفية الإسلامية أغلى من المنتجات التقليدية؟ أنا أعتقد أن هذه كانت تاريخية أكثر من كونها واقعا الآن، لأن في التاريخ أول ما بدأت المصرفية الإسلامية كان هناك نوع من الاحتكار، فكان السعر أغلى وكان هناك يعني عدد من المبررات. لكن الآن التنافسية قوية جدا بين المصارف الإسلامية وغيرها، ولهذا نجد أن في الأسعار الآن أو السوق أو السعر يحكمه السوق والعرض والطلب. فالآن نجد أن الأسعار في المصارف الإسلامية أسعار التمويلات متقاربة وتختلف باختلاف الوضع الائتماني فقط. أما بالغلاء فلا أعتقد. وإلا ما الذي يجعل شركة، خلنا في التمويلات الإنتاجية، ما الذي يجعل شركة كبرى مثل سابقة ورامكو وغيرها أو معادن أو كيان تأتي لتأخذ تمويلا من البنك الإسلامي أغلى من غيره؟ تجد أن الشركات تبحث عن مصلحتها، ولهذا لو لم تكن الأسعار منافسة لما كان واقعها الآن كما هو الآن.
شكر الله لكم شيخنا. أستاذ عبد المحسن الفارسي.
شكرا سعادة الرئيس، والشكر شكرا سعادة الرئيس، والشكر موصول للمتحدثين. جلسة ثرية ما شاء الله، شكرا لكم. في نقطة مهمة طرحت، اختلاف المخاطر بين المنتجات الإسلامية والتقليدية. أنا أعتقد أنه الاختلاف حتى المخاطر بين المنتجات داخل المؤسسة الإسلامية موجود، وأيضا المخاطر تختلف داخل المؤسسات التقليدية بناء على المنتجات. لكن أنتم طرحتم مباشرة الصكوك والسندات، فأنا أستطيع أن أقول أحيانا كثيرة الصكوك أقل مخاطر من السندات، لأنها فيها أصول وقد تكون فيها وفي تجارب واضحة. للأسف الشديد المفهوم هذا السائد سواء بارتفاع الأسعار بين متخذ القرار. أنا في مجلس إدارة شركة عالمية كبيرة جدا، طرح علينا في مجلس الإدارة قرار إصدار سندات، والشركة لم يسبق لها أن أصدرت صكوك. رفعت يدي باستحياء وقلت لماذا لا تكون صكوك؟ تمت الإجابة نفس الشيء، هي أغلى تكلفة وأغلى مخاطر. وبعد نقاش داخل المجلس قلنا نفوض الإدارة تبحث في الموضوع، وهذا عملي تم وبحثت في الموضوع، وقلنا نخلي القرار طلع سندات أو صكوك في قرار مجلس الإدارة، والإدارة هي المسؤولة. رجعت الإدارة بعد 4 أشهر قالت بنروح صكوك، ويكون الشيخ يعني كان أحد أعضاء الهيئة الشرعية، وأول صكوك تصدرها أول شركة سعودية صدروا مليار كان أقل سعراً، واتجهوا إلى 16 مليار. كان المانع الرئيسي هي المخاطر. فأنا أقول تصحيحاً الأسعار هي أفضل، ولكن هي منافسة، والمخاطر قد تكون أقل.
شكرا الله يحفظك. شكرا بعد.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum. I'm from the Islamic Development Bank, and I would like to make a point that Islamic banking is inherently developmental. So there is a developmental impact in Islamic banking. And in terms of cooperation, because I'm also ex-Al-Baraka and I've done commercial banking, Islamic commercial banking, so I would like to say that in order to improve our competitiveness, or the Islamic banking industry's competitiveness in the global space, which you have talked about, it is the product for everybody. I think more cooperation is needed to develop more products. That's my proposition.
Thank you very much.
I have 2 questions actually. The first is, if we want to make Islamic banking the norm, or not the alternative bank, but me being coming from a non-Muslim country majority, so here the Islamic banks automatically becomes an alternative banking. So how come we can make it not alternative banking? And the second question is, if the risks are same, for example, I have seen conventional bankings open up a different separate division for quick loans and instant loans and give it with interest. But in Islamic banking struggles to do so because it can't charge an interest, and also without having something as mortgage, it can't mitigate the risk. So how can we solve these 2 problems?
Thank you. طيب خلينا ناخذ آخر 3 مداخلات الله يحفظكم بس من الجهة هذا. الله يعطيكم العافية. سريعا اللواقط اذا كان في هذه الجهه.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور حامد. سؤالي بس للاستاذ عدنان، نتكلم على المخاطر. المخاطر في البنوك، المنتجات البنوك الاسلاميه تختلف كليا عن مخاطر البنك التقليدي. بتعيد ان احنا عندنا مخاطر اعلى من البنك التقليدي فعليا. هي مشكله بس مش مشكله التسعير، لا ده ازاي نعمل ميتيجيت لهذه المخاطر. عندنا اوبريشن، وعندنا مش دوكيومنتيشن بس، عندنا دوكيومنتيشن، وعندنا ريبيتيشن ريسك، وعندنا كل الحاجات دي كلها. فاعتقد ان التسعير برضو زي ما قال اتفضل الاستاذ محسن الفارس، ان احنا عندنا التسعير مش بيخضع بس لنقطه معينه، لاكثر من نقطه في التسعير بتاعنا، فعشان كده احنا مخاطرنا اعلى بكتير. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا دكتور محمد. في بقي اخر مداخلتين تفضل، وبعدين المداخله الاخيره هناك. تفضل الله يرحمك.
بسم الله. الرواد انشأوا المصارف الاسلاميه لعده اهداف، في هدفين رئيسيين. الهدف الاولاني القضاء على الربا، الهدف الثاني تطوير وترويج وتطبيق منظومه الاقتصاد الاسلامي. انا مش هسال هل تم ذلك خلال ال50 سنه اللي فاتوا، ولا هسال ال50 سنه الجايين. انا هسال في خلال 5 سنوات المجموعات البنكيه الاسلاميه ايه هدفها في الهدفين دول. السؤال الثاني بسرعه، هل يوجد مؤسسه لتسجيل حقوق الملكيه في المنتجات الاسلاميه الماليه المبتكره؟ جزاكم الله خير.
شكرا، يعطيك العافيه. اخر مداخلتين. الله تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مداخلة سريعة يا إخوة. أول شيء يعني اللي بعرفه أنا أنه صناع الصيرفة الإسلامية وأقطاب الصيرفة الإسلامية أكثر من واحد انتقد انحراف المصارف الإسلامية عن مساراتها التنموية والاجتماعية وعدم تحقيقها لمستهدفاتها، وتقاربها إلى حد التشابه مع البنوك التقليدية. ومن أبرز هؤلاء الشيخ صالح كامل الله يرحمه، كان يقول إحنا طهرنا معاملاتنا من الربا لكننا لم نتجاوز تبعات وآثار النظام المصرفي الربوي. وقال أعتقد جازما أننا لو بقينا في هذا الاتجاه فسوف تفقد المصرفية الإسلامية الأساس النظري والعملي لاستمرارها وقيامها. وذكر أيضا الدكتور جمال الدين عطية في كتاب البنوك الإسلامية 5 مفارقات بين النظرية والتطبيق. الحاصل يا أخوة أنه هذا الكلام اللي بيحكوه الرواد وهم الآباء وهؤلاء يعني واسأل به خبيرا ولا ينبئك مثل خبير، هؤلاء هم أخبر الناس بالمصرفية الإسلامية، ليس في كلامهم تجني ولا افتراء ولا اختلاق ولا كذب، وواقع المصارف الإسلامية شاهد على ذلك وكفى به شهيدا. الحاصل أن المصارف الإسلامية اليوم زادت فيها المرابحات، توسعت في المرابحات والعقود الشكلية. الحاصل أنه اليوم البنوك الإسلامية لا تتعاون فيما بينها، وجزء كبير من مصاريها بيروح لبنوك برا غير البلاد التي تعمل فيها. الحاصل أن المصارف الإسلامية اليوم ليس لديها أولويات في التوظيف والاستثمار، بتركز على الشركات الكبيرة ومتغافلة ومتناسية الشركات الصغرى
شكرا دكتور، يعطيكم العافية. طيب أنا أشكر الجميع مرة أخرى. من you said your job is easy. I think the most difficult job is everyone will hate the moderator because the speaker will hate it, the audience will hate it, but all in all by the end of the day يعني أشكر الجميع وأنا أعتذر والله، لكن في النهاية لدينا وقت نحترم المنظمين، ولدينا يعني حقيقة مسك الختام محاضرة معالي شيخنا، فهي أولى بمحافظة على الوقت. خلاصة الأمر سأعطي كل متحدث دقيقتين. I will give both of you 2 minutes. أبو أمين أنت سمعت كل العربي وتستطيع تعلق على ما شئت منه. دكتور عدنان maybe there is 2 points I would like to raise. Different, speakers they buttress in the same points that the risk is not different, and some of them they said even Mr. Abdul Muhsin Al-Faris, he is a former CEO of Al-Inma Bank. He mentioned even he believes sometimes even the risk in Islamic Bank is less than the conventional, and he mentioned that in one of the board that he was part of it, the CEO asked for financing and they gave him both to go sukuk or bonds, and when he went to the market and he did his his job, he found sukuk is better, and they started with 1 billion, they ended with 16 billion. So this one of the points again about the risk, is it different, the same or less? This one of the points, and again the perception about the risk is different, and also some commentators also they mentioned about the price. The perception again Islamic banking is more expensive. This is historical, as His Excellency Sheikh Abdul Rahman Al-Attar mentioned, but in reality now we are saying if it's not the same, it's less, and depends on the competition and also the clients. So these some of the points, and also this, there are 2 questions about how can we make more market share in the non-Islamic communities, non-Islamic countries. So I would like to leave 2 minutes for both of you, if you could just shed light.
I leave the risk point to Dr. Adnan because I think it was more your point, but there was one point mentioned regarding Islamic banks need to do more in terms of collaboration with each other, because they're not creating what I heard very important from Sheikh, I think is you're not creating a banking society, you're creating an economy. I think that was one of the comments, was an excellent point made, and I think that's very important because we are only a small piece in a bigger puzzle, and everybody has to come together to make a photo, right? So we play our role, but I fully agree the entire economy has to come together to create economic.
But then, if you can, in 30 seconds, a lot of experts they mentioned that they are not happy with the result of Islamic banking. Now all of them they agree that we could get rid of riba, yes, but until now we haven't applied the Islamic economy, you can say, principles yet.
طب ممكن اتكلم عربي عادي؟ اتكلم. خلاص حاضر. خلي السؤال الاخراني ده بالعربي. اوكي. Sorry I have to say. مظبوط. I think السؤال اللي كان في الاخر، هل البنوك الاسلاميه بتعمل شغل كافي انها تنمي المجتمع؟ I think الجزء المجتمعي
هي برضه حققت اهداف الرواد، القيم حقت الاقتصاد الاسلامي.
انا اجابتي للموضوع ده ان في اخر 50 سنه تم يعني كثير من المواضيع دي، ولكن اتفق ان لا، في شغل اكتر لازم يتعمل، واحنا متفقين على هذا الموضوع. ولو بصينا لموضوع الاستدامه اللي هو جزء من اصلا المعايير الاسلاميه، ده هيكون مهم جدا بالنسبه لنا للسنين القادمه ان شاء الله.
دكتور عدنان.
I think the brother asked a very good question. He was talking about, how we can go to non-Islamic countries and grow more. And I answered that, brother. And we can always maybe meet on the sideline. Is when we go to non-Islamic countries, obviously why are we going there? We are trying to take Islamic banking into those jurisdictions. And we can only do that if we give them certain products and services which are Sharia compliant, so we will never compromise those principles. But those value propositions need to match their customers' needs. And when we give that to them, they realize that, this is a form of banking that even we can accept, and that's how Islamic banking can further, whether it is in Europe or it is in Africa or it is in Asia.
Thank you, Doctor. أصحاب الفضيلة، أصحاب المعالي، الإخوة والأخوات، أشكركم جزيلا على صبركم وحلمكم وعلى وقتكم وتفاعلكم، وأعتذر عن عدم قدرتنا على تغطية أي سؤال. ومرة أخرى دور مقدم اللقاء أن يكون تحت الضيف في حكم المضيف، فنحن لا نعمل إلا أن نطبق أوامر المضيفين ونحترم بقية الأوقات. فشكرا لالتزامكم وشكرا لقبولكم، وكذلك باسمكم جميعا أنا أود أشكر بالغا حقيقة إضافة كبيرة أن يكون بيننا اليوم تنفيذيون على رأس هرم مجموعات من أهم مجموعات المصرفية الإسلامية، لأن يشاركوننا هموم الصناعة بمناظيرهم، ومهم جدا أن نراها بمنظور العلماء، بمنظور الطلاب العلم، بمنظور المستخدمين والمستهلكين، وأن ننظر إلى تحديات الصناعة بعدسات القادة التنفيذيين، لأنهم يواجهون تحديات قد لا نستشعرها كثيرا، فجيد أن نرى من الزوايا المختلفة. ومرة أخرى دور المقدم أن لا ينقل أي قناعات شخصية، وإنما ينقل ما قد يدار في أذهن الناس. أشكركم جزيلا وأعتذر عن أي خطأ أو تقصير، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خيرا سعادة الدكتور حامد حسن ميرة على إدارتكم، وسعادة الأساتذة الأفاضل الرؤساء التنفيذيين. إخوتي الأحبة، مشايخنا الكرام، بعد 5 دقائق إن شاء الله عز وجل موعدنا مع مسك الختام، مع شخصية كبيرة من الرواد الأعلام الذين عاصروا نشأة الصناعة والرضاعة والفطام. نحن اليوم ضيوف عليه، فأهلا بكم يا كرام مع معالي الشيخ عبد الله المنيع. إن شاء الله نستمع إلى ذكرياته عن الصيرفة الإسلامية بعد دقائق حتى يقوموا بترتيب المسرح، وجزاكم الله خيرا.